me know when the people that you're expected to come are there.
I just let him in. So there's Brad and a few others. We might want some introductions so we can make sure we know who's all here.
They're still coming.
Yeah, Bill's here. Hey, Bill.
Hi, everyone.
Baby,
Hello.
there's a baby.
There is.
Hi.
What?
Okay, I think I've let everybody in that so far, and I'll just let them in if they.
Well, let's do this. Let's do a call to order and go around the room and have people acknowledge that they're on. I'll say I'm on.
And you are. Marge,
No
you
one
wanna
else?
say- Marge, so Marge, you want to say who you are, and then I'll call on other people to
Marge
do.
Ebensteiner, board member.
Okay, Diane
Diane Ward, board member.
and Larry
Larry Swope, board member.
and Cliff
Cliff Vikinger, board member.
and Pam.
Pam Skinner, board member.
Okay, and Tracy,
Tracy Gallowitz, attorney for the district.
Brad,
Brad Lundeman with Bar Engineering, engineer for the district.
Paige,
Paige Alberg with the district project manager.
and Nicole.
Nicole Soderholm, I'm the permit coordinator at the district.
And
Is that
Is
me,
that
Tina?
it, Tina?
yes, Bill,
Bill.
Bill Bartoja, Natural Resources Specialist with the Watershed.
Dave,
Dave Velazan, Watershed Project Coordinator with the Watershed.
and Eric.
Eric Cordy, water monitoring coordinator.
And then I'm going to call on our visitors. And if you're here visiting, let me know if you're here for to give a visitor presentation, or if you're here for a permit discussion on Hillcrest, or for some other reason. And I'm going to call on first, it says KMP.
That's Keith Pilgrim, Bar Engineering.
Oh, hi, Keith. I didn't even recognize you. Keith Pilgrim, Bar Engineering. Hi, Keith.
Hi.
James.
Hi, James Soltis with WSB. We're a civil consultant for the port here to talk about Hillcrest.
Great, thanks, James. Allison.
Allison Harwood, also with WSB, same as James, here with the port to talk about Hillcrest.
Okay, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine Sarnke. I work with the St. Paul Port Authority, and I'm the project manager for the Hillcrest redevelopment project.
Great. Bert.
Bert Johnson, Twin Lake Association, here to make a public comment and observe particularly the water quality report.
Great, thanks, Bert. Monty.
Hey folks, Monty Hillman, Senior Vice President of Real Estate Development with the Port Authority. Just let you know, I am having some intermittent audio issues where I'm losing sound from everyone here. So if you're trying to get my attention and I am staring off into space or monkeying around or shutting off my video, I don't know if I got to shut the kids streaming stuff down or what, but I'm losing audio on and off here. I apologize.
Okay, thanks, Monty. Bill.
Hi, Bill Dermody. I'm staff with the City of St. Paul working on the Hillcrest Master Plan project.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Ellen. Oh, Ellen, you're muted.
Can you tell us who Ellen is?
There we go. Ellen Stewart. I am a landscape architect with the City of St. Paul Parks and Recreation Department, and I am the department lead for the Hillcrest site.
Great, thanks, Ellen. Allison. Allison, are you?
I think you already called on me.
She already.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unless there's another
Sorry,
one.
missed you. And then there's somebody at the end, GAH.
Hi, yes, I'm George Haney. I'm a senior project manager with the port and work with Monty and Catherine.
Okay, so most of our visitors are here for the discussion on the Hillcrest site. And we have one person, Bert's here for visitor comments.
Okay, Should we make this official, an official call to order at this point in time?
Sure.
All right. This is the official call to order. It's 6:36. First agenda item is approval of the consent agenda, actually.
It's actually just the approval of the agenda, but then if anybody wants to remove anything from the consent agenda, now would be the time to do that.
Yeah, I want to take out the meeting minutes. I have a quick discussion on one item that I want to talk about.
Okay. We'll do that right after the consent agenda is approved.
I'll
So we
move
need
approval of the agenda as modified.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Wait, I have a question.
Oh, yep.
We were going to add an update on the CAC to our agenda. Can we do that next time?
Yep, so we'll include that update when the CAC has had a meeting. So they're having a meeting coming up in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
Yep, and so it'll be on the January board
Agenda. Thank you.
We have to go around the room now. So Tina, will you do that?
We do. So I'll start with Diane.
Aye.
Larry.
Aye.
Cliff.
Aye.
Pam.
Aye.
And Marge.
Aye. So Larry, should we do your request at this point in time?
Well, oh yeah, that's fine.
Or do you want to take a motion? I move we approve the meeting minutes.
I'll second.
And then we can have discussion.
Discussion, thank you. Okay, that's good. On the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council write-up, there are a couple of things that I think just need to be clarified. One is that when Cliff made the comment about us increasing our budget, it wasn't a resolution that had to be approved. It's just that nobody responded when he said anything. So instead of saying the request was not approved, I think it should say there was no immediate reaction, which is.
Oh, yeah.
Or no objection.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was no reaction, actually. It in the short term, it fell on deaf ears, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The other one, and at some point in the meeting, I would like an update because Tina and Cliff were going to be networking with some people to find out whether they would increase it. But we agreed, I went back and looked at the meeting, we agreed that we would increase ours by 20,000 no matter what. There wasn't really a stipulation on it. It was just an objective that other watersheds increase their. So what the meeting minutes make it sound like is if they don't, we're not going to increase ours, but we agreed to increase it by $20,000. And Cliff, tomorrow, they're making a presentation again. I hope you're going to be in that meeting and can make the request a second time.
At the mod convention?
Yeah, at the mod meeting, right.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Thanks
Just
for
those
that.
two little changes, yeah.
So Larry, again, will you summarize what we just did?
Yeah, we changed well, at least what I did, was I changed the wording to say rather than, but that request was not approved, to say there was no immediate reaction, and change the word stipulation to objective.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other changes before we vote? So we have a motion, we have a second, we have discussion.
Yeah.
Tina?
Ready for vote? Diane.
Aye.
Larry.
Aye.
Cliff.
Aye.
Pam.
Aye.
And Marge.
Aye. So I believe that brings us down to visitor comments.
We first have to approve the consent agenda as well. That has
Oh,
not-
I thought we did that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll need a motion.
Yep. I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion? Tina?
Diane.
Aye.
Larry.
Aye.
Cliff.
Aye.
Pam,
Aye.
and Mark.
Aye. All right, let's try this again. I believe we are now at visitor comments.
Yep, that's correct. And Bert is here for comments tonight.
And where is Bert?
He's,
Bert's the only one?
yes. All right, go ahead, Bert, if you want to unmute.
All right, thanks, Chair and board members. Again, Bert Johnson, president of the Twin Lake Association. And I've said it at many, I took a hiatus for a few meetings, I guess, and gave you a little break from us. And we were formed last year around the first one that we would figure out a way to reroute West Vadnais or otherwise ensure that West Vadnais wouldn't again inundate Twin Lake, which, as we all know, happened last spring and certainly caught all the residents here off guard. Secondly, that an outlet be restored at historic levels to Twin Lake, commensurate with ditch 16, which historically served the lake. And then third, that our water quality and clarity be improved and restored and preserved. So of those three, we appreciate the work that the board has done in establishing the outlet. I guess I talked at the last time we had a meeting that we had attended, that we're, cautiously optimistic about how that outlet is going to work. We've had a lot of residents raise issues about, well, it could fluctuate, the level should be lower because historically it was lower, but the outlet's the outlet. So we're again, cautiously optimistic. On the first one, I know you have some, in terms of West Vadnais inundation, we know that you have some long-term studies and goals, and you're continuing to explore that. So we're like semi-patiently awaiting that. And on the third one, we did see that there's something in the board packet related to water quality, and it's noted in the board packet that Twin Lake has a poor, I don't want to use the exact terms that I think Barr did in the study, but our 10-year trajectory is not going in the right direction at Twin Lake, and there are some concerns that residents have. Some of those are anecdotal, and some of them are now scientific. We have actually undertaken as a board efforts to monitor and take samples ourselves too, and we'll be continuing to do that. So we think that which should help, and we're going to share those with you and publicize them as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing your report on that. We are concerned. I know there was a note in there about actions the board could take to improve the clarity. Interested in hearing what your discussion is along those lines today. And that's really it. So thanks for having me here.
Great.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 5, permit program. Does anybody want to talk about that?
Yes, we have quite a few people here to talk about the Hillcrest redevelopment.
Indeed, we do.
Nicole, did you want to kick that off and introduce James?
Sure. Yeah, so tonight we have folks from the St. Paul Port Authority, which took over the Hillcrest site, and they're working on some redevelopment options. We have folks from the city of St. Paul and also the port's consultant, WSB. So James and Monty will be leading a discussion about the Hillcrest site, kind of looking into a history of the site, background of what's been done so far and what they anticipate will need to be done in order to redevelop that property. They'll also dive into some potential water resource issues, including stormwater management and also wetland impacts. So looking to have an open discussion with the board for any concerns, glaring issues, any barriers with regard to the district's rules and our no net loss wetlands policy early on, so that they can guide their design. Yeah, so I can turn it over to James and Monty. Hopefully I did a little introduction for you.
Thank you, Nicole. Can you folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
I am going to leave my camera off, and I do deeply apologize. I know that's a tough way to connect and communicate here, but I just think I'm going to lose audio if I try and turn my camera on here. But I will share my screen, and Nicole laid out a pretty ambitious list of information that I really don't expect us to get to tonight. We really just hope to introduce ourselves as brother, sister, public sector organization and our mission, and some sort of an intro to our work at the Hillcrest site, and really envision this as the start of an ongoing conversation that will probably go on for the next decade as we develop the site. So I don't know we'll get as far into the weeds, but certainly provide you guys some good information and maybe some opportunities for partnership moving forward. So with that, I will try and share my screen here. And if someone could give me the high sign and let me know when you see Hillcrest Development Overview.
Yep, we can see it.
Wonderful.
But what is that photo of?
That's of the golf course. That's a drone photo.
Okay.
We have our own drone operator now, and this just got trained and licensed, and this was one of his first projects, was to go get some aerials of the golf course. So I'm going to start at the beginning because, there we go. Because I think it's the folly of a lot of organizations, particularly public sector organizations, to assume people know who we are and what we do and really care about it. The Port Authority has been around for about 85 years. Our mission is to create quality job opportunities, expand the tax base, and advance sustainable development. That last piece is particularly meaningful to me. I came out of the Office of Environmental Assistance in the late 90s and was really indoctrinated into the world of sustainable design and development by some of the leading experts in the state at the time, and really stand on other folks' shoulders as we try to implement sustainable development projects in our work. I'm the Senior Vice President of Real Estate Development. I lead our development team of about 6 people. We're a small organization. We're only 18 some people. And we are responsible largely for dealing with distressed real estate, mostly contaminated industrial redevelopment in the city of St. Paul. We started managing river commerce. We still do actively manage 4 barge terminals, shipping terminals. And we believe that the working river is incredibly important, as it has been for decades here in St. Paul. There's a bunch of jobs that you'll see noted here, a bunch of tax revenue that helps pay for all the services and amenities that we all appreciate here in St. Paul. This is a map just for reference of what we call the St. Paul Harbor. We've been working with your staff most recently at Red Rock Terminal on a variety of issues there. And as you can see, it's a pretty wide swath across the city that is the St. Paul Harbor. Just some tidbits so folks understand why we think the working river is important to the economy here in St. Paul and in the state of Minnesota. There's a lot of grain that obviously goes out, and there's a lot of commodities that obviously come in. Drinking water, construction, road salt, road safety, all of these would be significantly impacted if we didn't have a working shipping terminal, shipping harbor in St. Paul. River shipping is very fuel efficient. These barges get commodities quite a bit further per ton mile gallon of fuel. And one of those 15 barge tows basically takes over 1,000 semis off the freeways. That's a lot of carbon emissions. That's a lot of sulfur and diesel emissions that none of us want in our communities. It's a lot of road maintenance. So we really do think that shipping these commodities via river is important for the foreseeable future and has been for our past. I want to run you through just a few examples so you understand our commitment to sustainable development and some of the ways we've worked in partnership with your sister watershed, the Capital Region Watershed District. This is a simple site plan of the former Midway Stadium site. Was highly contaminated, was a former dump site. If you had been to the stadium, you knew that the outfield kind of fell and swooped and rose up and down as the waste material, horse manure, other organics, hay bales, et cetera, were deteriorating in the outfield. This thing would raise and lower. We cleaned it up. We cleaned up the contamination. We put a 200,000 square foot light industrial building out there, which is now home to the Tierney brothers and 4 other technology related companies. What you might not know is that with the help of
Hello?
Oh, I think we might have lost James.
His graphic is still up though.
Yeah.
This is Catherine Sarnicki with the St. Paul Port Authority. Hopefully Monty will be able to rejoin us, but I will try and jump in.
Oh, I got you back here, I think. Hello?
Oh, Monty's back. Okay,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Okay. I told the 14-year-old to turn her computer off, so I bet she's testing me. This is if I drop out on you again, if someone could wave at me, because I see your video, even if my audio drops. Are you still hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the old Midway Stadium site. We worked with Cap Region, a watershed district out here. It's a 12-acre site. As you can see, it's almost all impervious. We are capturing and infiltrating 100% of the rain that falls on this site on a nearly all impervious site. We found a great vein of sand out there where you see underground infiltration basin. And so we pipe. It was quite a bit.
Lost you.
I don't think he can hear us when we lose him.
Well,
yeah,
where is
wave.
So these are pictures. I'll try and jump in. It won't be quite so
There
soon.
we go, Catherine.
Can you hear me or is he back in?
Yes.
No, we can hear you.
Okay.
Hello?
So these are pictures of the permeable pavement we put out in the southeast corner of the Midway parking lot and some of the drainage system. So what we were able to do is find an area that wasn't contaminated within the site and infiltrate the stormwater from the whole site, as well as take some of the stormwater from the adjacent roadway and treat that and infiltrate it into the ground as well. I'm sure Monty would tell you much more elegantly all about it.
Am I back? Can you guys hear
Yes,
me?
You're back.
Okay, I just turned off another device, so hopefully that helps. Yes, interlocking pavers we're testing on the left. 50 parking stalls, we're testing that against a product called Filter Pave on the right, which is a crushed glass permeable paving system. So we're sort of experimenting with different BMPs out there. The other interesting thing, so these are also industrial interlocking permeable pavers. These are what goes in the loading dock. We had never seen these used before in our marketplace. And to date, they have functioned well. We had to convince our development partner that it was a good idea to use all this stuff, and Cap Region helped out with a grant, and it's working great so far. We went a step further and we instrumented this system. So we're in partnership with the Pollution Control Agency and Cap Region. We paid for a bunch of the instrumentation. Cap Region has provided a bunch of the labor, and the PCA is providing the lab analysis, and we're doing a multi-year analysis of water quality and infiltration rates out here to prove out the data that we all are looking for about how some of these underground infiltration systems function over the long term. That was the second effort of that sort.
That's very impressive. Well, you can't hear me anyhow.
I think maybe, James, do you want to hop to
Here in blue.
I think we got him.
Monty's back again, maybe.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So this is Beacon Bluff in blue. This pink area is a subwatershed of 143 acres that we are capturing in a next generation underground infiltration basin utility scale that is infiltrating and treating this 143 acres that previously all went into the what's known as the Swede Hollow storm tunnel, a 100-year-old brick tunnel, and
Right.
basically right into the river untreated. We discovered we could capture all of that and infiltrate it on our Beacon Bluff site. So we did that in partnership with Cap Region and the city of St. Paul. Just another example of how we've worked in the past to manifest our sustainable development mission. We also instrumented that with infiltration rate samplers, standpipes, water quality samplers, standpipes, and working with Cap Region on those performance metrics to figure out, are we really getting the environmental efficacy out of these sustainable design intentions that we hope for? That's the thing being constructed. As you can see, it's utility scale. It's pretty big. That's a couple of little tiny folks there standing there while we built it. So those were just a few examples of how we've approached this work in the past, and maybe that's some inspiration as to how we could work together at Hillcrest in the future. This is the golf course site there in red, almost into Maplewood, about 5 minutes north of 3M on 94 and 5 minutes south from 36. It's right at the intersection southwest quadrant of Larpenteur and McKnight. Looks like a big old golf course. It is a big old golf course. This is just a slide about the timeline, about why and how we acquired it. It was a private country club since the 1920s. Really was not a publicly accessible space. This depicts the contamination on the site. Historically, they used a mercury-containing anti-fungicide that they would spray on the course to use over the winter months to prevent mold growth. And we knew that, I guess, when we did our due diligence on the site. But every couple of weeks, as we did more environmental investigation, we found it got worse and worse. They would typically only use this on the greens. And what we discovered over time, for whatever reason, other golf courses would use this on the greens.
Yeah.
Well, we lost Monty again, but I think I'll jump in here. So,
Well, James, can I ask a question about this?
Sure.
Since the runoff coming, this is the top of a hill. So the runoff coming off this golf course going down the hill, would that have been contaminated from the mercury?
So as far as we know, it's areas that possibly due to overspray or additional material that they moved around on site. As far as we know, the mercury is contained only within the soils.
Okay.
So it's not being moved by water. This diagram shows, the areas where we suspect contaminants or have tested for contaminants and found them. It's important to note that we have found contaminants within the soils of several of the wetlands. The water within the wetlands shows clean, but some of the soils within the wetlands is contaminated.
Okay.
Did you also test the surrounding area?
We have the contaminants. We've only been testing within the site boundaries.
Well, I'm concerned because I only live a couple houses from the golf course.
There has been, well, as far as we can tell, the mercury is not mobile. It doesn't move with water. It doesn't move through air. It's not increasing in depth in the soils. It's contained within the first couple inches of the soil. So we don't believe that it has left the golf course.
Well, and I hope you're right.
So this is showing the cleanup standards for the site. So as we move to develop the site, we have to meet certain standards of cleanup for residential and industrial development. And that's required for anything that can be accessed by the public. So our concentration of mercury is quite a bit higher than those standards. And this would also apply to any development. We would need to clean up the wetlands as well as part of this development because they could be accessed by the public. So that will include removing several inches of soil, testing repeatedly to find the edges of contamination, and then either disposing of that contaminated soil off-site or encasing it on-site. So as we proceed with this development, we will do much more testing. We will find the extents of where the mercury is, and we will be required to remove all of it. So we will find, those extents of where the mercury is contained.
Hello,
Do you want to move to the next slide?
regulations?
I was looking for, okay, I'm being corrected. It's the first couple of feet.
1 to 3 feet.
1 to 3 feet. So speaking of those wetlands, we've done a number of investigations on site. We have done a wetland delineation report, and that has been approved by the city of St. Paul. So here are the delineated wetlands on site. We have also done some quality analysis. You can see they are listed by managed there, primarily managed C. We do have 1D and 1B, so kind of mid-class wetland quality. Also listed on here is some of our wetland terminology that we're using to talk about this. Since the contaminated wetlands will need to be cleaned, we're calling that restoration of wetlands. So this will involve removing any of the contaminated soils within the wetland and then potentially bringing them back to their current quality.
Next slide.
Yeah, next slide. So it's important to note that the city of St. Paul is the LGU for the site. Any kind of mitigation that we are going to look for as part of the development of the site will be at a 2-to-1 ratio of replacement. This can be accomplished through either on-site mitigation or the purchase of wetland credits. There's also the Ramsey-Washington rules. We understand that there's buffer requirements. We're looking at meeting those or exceeding those for all preserved, restored, or on-site mitigated or created wetlands. And then we also know that the Ramsey-Washington has a preference for no net loss on-site mitigation. So as we look into designing this site, we're going to strive for a 1-to-1 replacement of any disturbed wetlands on site. We're looking to, if we are going to mitigate or create wetlands, we're going to look at creating these adjacent to any of the existing wetlands or locations that are hydraulically appropriate. This is a hill, it's a high point, and we are going to be placing those wetlands in areas that hydraulically make sense, areas that are low on the site, as really this site's the only thing that will feed these wetlands in the future. Let's go to the next slide.
Can you guys hear me, James?
Yeah, we can hear you, Monty.
So these are labeled as policy and technical priorities. They really reflect what is enshrined in a city ordinance. There was a city ordinance required to approve the Port Authority's financing for the acquisition of the site. And that led to an agreement, unanimous support by the city council and the administration for a goal to create 1,000 jobs on site, 1,000 residential units, to provide about 20 acres of open space, 5 of which would be active park space, and per the comprehensive plan to create a neighborhood node in the northern third of the site. These next couple of slides are different ways. We've looked for several different ways to illustrate and communicate these sort of competing or maybe overlapping, in another way, synergistic goals. And one thing we've heard from the neighborhood repeatedly, and that leads us to strive to provide 1,000 jobs at this location, is there's about 20,000 residents in the neighborhood, but there's only about 3,000 jobs. So the neighborhood is a net export. Everyone has to commute to work, more or less. The neighborhood organizations will tell us we need jobs in this neighborhood, decreases carbon emissions, decreases that time lost in travel, et cetera. We are striving and we are currently pricing a strategy to build this.
Okay.
I think I want to note that, you know, I don't think we've talked about it to this point, but the port has owned the site since 2019. At that time, they also performed a market study to find out what kind of development could occur on this site. And it came back pretty strong jobs, pretty strong housing. And since that point, we've also, you know, there's been a master plan process that's been going on through the city that's had community outreach. The port has had community outreach. There's been technical advisory committee meeting monthly to talk about this. So we have had a lot of input and such. There's a lot of not competing, but a lot that has to fit onto this site. We're thinking it's about 150 acres of required programming, and there's only about 112 acres out there. So some things are gonna have to play double duty. And whether that is right of way that also does stormwater, or green space that also does stormwater, or industrial space that also has wetlands on it. Everything is gonna have to fit one way or the other. So that's kind of what this is showing. So as part of that, we're talking about impacting wetlands on site that we will then mitigate and move to areas that it is more, allows for an easier fit of all of these different community and city and port priorities.
Thank you, Catherine.
I think that's going to help with your audio, Monty. Sure.
Well,
I've taken over sharing the slides, so hopefully that'll help Monty's bandwidth. One other thing to note, I mean, the point of this slide is just to show we have a 112 acre site. And so far we've identified over 150 acres of required programming for the site between having space for jobs and housing and this neighborhood node and the park space and keeping the wetlands and trails and right of way and stormwater. So we're trying to figure out how they can all overlap, but there's certainly a lot of competing items going on the site.
Hey, Catherine, can you go to full screen view?
Did that do it or no?
Go over to window or view, excuse me, view. There you go.
There we go. Okay. James, did you want to talk more?
No, let's move on to the next slide.
Okay. I think, and Monty, if you want to take back over, let me know. But I think some of these were just to give you guys some examples of industrial lot sizes and how long and wide things need to be to fit some of these parcels, and how we're trying to fit so much onto one site. So this is just an example showing if we just put industrial buildings on the site, you know, without some of the other things and put some other things in the site, that we're losing, you know, we're just having a hard time fitting everything in, basically.
Yeah, and this is not an example of what will occur. Go ahead, Monty.
This is just illustrative to show that we have to, per the comp plan, provide a neighborhood node to the north. There's strong desire in the neighborhood to provide a buffer to the west and south, which is a solid single family residential neighborhood. And so you can see when we use typical lot dimensions and building sizes, we start to run into all kinds of impacts. This is just purely illustrative to try and show another way of some of the conflicts we're running into.
And could you go back a second? See the dotted areas? What is that? There's a node in the north, and then
that's the neighborhood node. The neighborhood node to the north, and just this. James or Kat, you can take it.
Yeah, the neighborhood node is part of the city's comp plan. They recognize this area as something that requires a neighborhood node. The dashed lines to the south and west are meant to be neighborhood buffer representations. So that's separating industrial from existing housing. It's illustrating the number of uses.
I'm sorry, will that be empty, or are you envisioning it to be park, or I'm just asking what is inside of that outline?
We see it as a mixture of housing or green space or park or roadway. It's really not, we don't know for sure, you know, the master
Oh,
plan.
okay, good enough.
And we don't think this will be a final configuration or any configuration. We're just showing that, you know, looking at just 3 components of the things that need to be fit on the site, it's already tight and we're already having conflicts with some of the topography, some of the wetlands. So it's just to sort of illustrate some of the conflicts that we're having out on that site. So you can see, you know, if we look at moving wetlands in the future, so you have some idea of what the competing interests are that we're looking at out there. Looking forward, I'll just jump in here. I know Monty's audio is still sketchy. So we would love to, you know, have innovative ideas and partner with the watershed, whether that be through performance metrics, demonstration areas, wetland restoration opportunities. We would really love to have a discussion with you, the board members, to find out what's important to you. We are at the infancy of this project, and you know, sort of the sky's the limit. If you guys have things that you want to demonstrate or pilot test, or goals that you have that you're looking for a site to try something out on, we would love to be a partner in that regard. And hopefully we've showed you through some of the previous examples that we love being partnership with watershed organizations and other organizations as well, to meet everybody's goals and advance sustainable development. So certainly we are always additionally looking for funding sources that may be available to the watershed to further those goals that you have and that we may share. And then just sort of a next step, you know, once the master planning is complete, hopefully that will be middle of next year. At some point we will come forth with a wetland conservation act replacement plan application, which will include the sequencing and the detailed analysis of the wetlands. We're just not there yet, but we really wanted to inform you guys about who the Port Authority was, why we got involved in the site, and find out what some of your priorities are for the watershed, so that we can have those in mind as we go forward with our design. And with that, we'd love to hear from you. Any questions and comments?
When can we expect a more detailed plan?
Well,
I guess, I know you don't have the exact answer to any of these questions
well,
at this point.
I
mean, when you said we'll be working with you for the next 10 years, made me think that this is a...
We will be redeveloping the site and building it out for the next 10 years. Hopefully you, at least our permitting will be done early.
Okay.
I think Cliff had a question or comment.
A couple of comments. One is, and I'm sure you've heard this from some of the community comments, it's an extremely rolling site. And obviously you have to do quite a bit of excavation to remove the contaminated soils. So basically the entire site is going to be disturbed, except the existing wetlands, well, even the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the trees will probably be gone. I imagine that even the current shape of the hillsides and whatever, to fit in this kind of intensive development, my impression is that you're going to have to totally change the topography of the site. One of the things that I think is unique about the site is it is the highest elevation point in the entire city of St. Paul. I think
second
that's one
highest in Ramsey County.
Yeah, I think it's one of the unique things about this site. Secondly, I'm concerned about the wetlands. I think with that type of topography change, it's going to be extremely difficult to salvage most of them, except the one way in the north side, which is your community node. But I think that's probably one that is likely to be able to stay. And then the one on the very southeast side by the maintenance shed, it's probably heavily contaminated, but it is a low point anyway. So I imagine that could be a potential mitigation expansion site. But the other ones are perched up on the hillsides, and I think my impression is they're going to be extremely difficult to maintain in any form like they are now. So I think I agree with you, James, that I think we're going to need some creative, innovative kind of methods, ideas to keep at least a one-to-one replacement on the site. And I would really like to exceed one-to-one. We don't like to see any wetlands leave the district. And I think you're going to need some of those areas to do the water quality treatment anyway, and some infiltration. So I think some of those open space areas are going to have to be probably some good portion of it wetland or water quality elements. So I don't think it need any response, but those are just some of my comments.
Thanks, Cliff. Diane has her hand up, Marge.
I just had a question. Maybe you can clarify the mercury contamination, because I understood at first that you were saying that it wouldn't wash down the hill with water, but then in the packet of materials it says that the way the mercury got into the wetlands was washing into them. So
the mercury binds to the sediment, and when the sediment erodes or washes down, it only travels with the sediment. It's not individually mobile in the water or from, say, for example, one soil particle to another. It binds to the soil, and then when the soil moves, and so as you can imagine, that soil sediment only moves so far, particularly if we're redeveloping the site and implementing BMPs to stop that from happening.
And Monty or James, could you clarify the cleanup requirements? Considering it's immobile, it seems safer to not disturb those areas, but obviously I'm not an expert in soil contamination. Can you explain what rules are governing you to remove that all?
Right now, it's subject to human health risk standards established by the PCA. Right now, it's exposed and available for human ingestion, human dermal contact, meaning you could touch it, and even inhalation, you could breathe it. So it really, even as it sits today, is not safe for public access. We, under federal rules, federal law, CERCLA, we are required to prevent public access to the site as it sits today. It has been determined eligible as a brownfield, as a contaminated site, and we have to protect public health by preventing public access to the site as it sits today.
Thank you.
Pam has her hand up.
So I'm still concerned with Marge's house and the houses around there. If it's on a hill and soil erodes and the stuff's been being contaminated for the last 50 years, and the levels are so high of contaminants that even if, 0.5% of it moved, that seems like that would still put the neighboring area above the safe level. And that might be something we consider looking into, or collaborating with others to look into, is to start testing the soil at Marge's house and her neighborhood, or wherever the soil erodes to.
It already exists at fairly decent concentrations through ambient dropping out of the atmosphere. Kat, maybe you or James could elaborate on that.
Sure. I know at Beaver Lake, that's maybe half a mile to a mile south of the Hillcrest site, they did an atmospheric mercury deposition cleanup where they took mercury out of Beaver Lake. But that was deemed to have come from atmospheric deposition. So there is some mercury all over because of this atmospheric deposition. What we can see, and maybe I can go back to that contamination slide without making you too dizzy. The thing that's made us more comfortable about that is that we have found some boundaries within the site, right? We've found the limits of the contamination of the soil. And yes, there is some areas where there's water that could potentially surface, flow over the site. But most of the stormwater is contained on site, and we are addressing the areas that have stormwater that could potentially carry sediments off site to try and make sure that all those sediments remain in place on the site so that we can address them where they are.
Oh, good answer. Yeah, thank you. That's very encouraging.
Larry?
Yeah, I just had a comment to kind of back up what Cliff was saying, but maybe from a different point of view. I live up in Shoreview, and one of the third most important thing to people who live in Shoreview is access to public parks and the outdoors. Comes after police and schools. And I would encourage you to try to think around how you can keep the wetlands there as a priority. Because if you don't do that, you're liable to end up with a neighborhood that doesn't have that kind of outdoor amenity that people expect from Minnesota. So it should be more of a priority than it would normally look like, even from a watershed point of view, just from a community ambiance point of view. The watershed, as we know in many of our meetings, continues to see wetland areas move north. And that's not a good thing for the urban communities down there. So I appreciate what you're saying on this, and I think it looks initially like you have a really good plan. But maybe there are some trade-offs that would make the neighborhood more exciting to people if it had those wetlands remaining in there than just putting a whole bunch of houses and light industry and saying good luck.
I would second that and also say that keeping interesting topography, and I would bet for the environment, it's better to have undulating surfaces rather than flat surfaces and green covered surfaces and trees opposed to pavement as much as possible too. So yeah,
Yeah, that's a really good point. I grew up in a town called Park Forest right outside of Chicago, kind of grew up there. And one of the things when they built Park Forest that they did was to curve all of the streets in sort of a way that you couldn't look down the street and see all the way down the street. You just see the road go off. And it was a wise decision that they made to do that. And it's the same thing here, Pam. If you leave a lot of the topography in, you don't end up with just another part of St. Paul. You end up with a unique neighborhood.
Well, Larry, if we go by the diagrams that we've been shown, everything is in straight lines.
I know. That's
squares and straight lines.
Looking at them.
To be clear, guys, that certainly is not where the most recent master plan concepts are at. Again, that was just an illustrative example to show we're trying to fit 10 pounds of you-know-what in a 5-pound bag.
Yeah. The other thing that sort of strikes me is that and this isn't exactly watershed stuff, but you want to have light industry to provide jobs for people that already live there, and you're adding a whole bunch of more people. So I presume you've done the math to figure out how much industry you have to support the additional people, plus the people that are already there.
I think I'm hearing, and I just want to play this back so that the Port Authority folks can hear. I mean, I've heard that from our board that wetlands, that yes, 1-to-1, we're definitely going to be looking that 1-to-1 is achieved on site. That's a really important goal of our board, and we've been holding that fairly strong over the last, well, since the inception of this plan, especially, and that we collaborate with our landowners. So we definitely would work with you on innovative solutions. We held that workshop not long ago too, where we talked about stacking of services and how we might look at this creatively to provide that. So those are some of the things I'm hearing back from my board. Was there anything else that you wanted feedback from them before we wrap this discussion up?
Can I ask one additional question? One of the questions that came up when we were looking at it, sort of how to tackle wetlands was, is there any benefit to trying to improve the quality of wetlands that we can retain on site. And what are the watershed's goals as far as that? You know, are there certain types of wetlands that you'd rather see preserved? I know most of these are upland wetlands. Are those more valuable or less valuable based on where we're at? Just some feedback on that would be helpful to our design folks.
I don't know if any board members want, Cliff, did you want to jump in? Sure.
Given the location, I would think because you've got employees, workers, businesses, and residents, and this is going to be an active site, I would think wetlands more on the type 3 open water wetlands, but something that can be restored with native buffers would be aesthetically pleasing. I think they're also the kinds of wetlands that can absorb some water without significant damage to the ecosystem, you know, given some design factors. But I would think I can envision you're going to be eliminating 1 or 2 of these ponds and trying to expand it in another location. I would think some thought given to the aesthetics of the revised wetland, and seeing that you're gonna have to do some excavation, most of it anyway, they're gonna have to be redesigned to a degree. I would encourage you to work with our staff on how to design the improved wetland system. Hopefully it's improved. We've done a lot of restoration activities. We've got a lot of expertise in-house, and we know of other people that do good work in that field. So I'd encourage you to work with us on that. It's another collaboration area.
Very, very helpful. And, you know, we didn't have a real specific ask today. We wanted to introduce ourselves as another public sector organization with a public mission that wants to work to help you achieve your mission as we achieve ours. You know, we're not a private developer out here looking for another few units to make another buck. We're out there trying to serve the citizens of the city of St. Paul that we are responsive to the board, to the city council, to the administration. And so we really look forward to working in partnership with you guys as we design the site and spend the next 10 years building it out. So thank you so much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a great presentation.
Sorry for the technical glitches.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That'll happen. Thank you all for coming. And you're welcome to stick around, or you're welcome to head out as well.
Yeah, there's only 3 hours left. I suggest you stay.
Have a good night, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Permit program. Let's see, applications, none. Hillcrest Enforcement Action Report. Do we want to talk about that? Is there anything to report? All right, then we'll move to the Stewardship Grant Program. Again, applications, none. Budget status, and we've got an action item.
Yes.
The
So
2020 program overview and 2021 program review and approval.
Yep, I'll
Yeah.
turn to the page.
Yes, thank you. I think I'm going to try to share my screen. I'm going to do my annual presentation. Let me see. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. And it's on my other screen, so sorry if I'm not looking at the camera. I know it's always weird.
Okay.
I'll try to go through this fairly quick. If you have any questions, definitely let me know or follow up after. There are a few things at the end that are more important. And I realized like Monday or Tuesday that I didn't send out the usual memo that I have with this, but there's nothing surprising as far as approval for 2021. But I'll get to that at the end. So you guys know it was busy cost share year. We had a lot of applications. It was great. We didn't know, or I didn't know when this whole pandemic started, how it would go, how it would affect people. But we had a lot of projects, 52 projects approved. In the past, it's been about like 30, I think was the max, maybe 32 maximum projects, a lot of residential, 42. a few government projects, which it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in upcoming years. But some good larger scale projects came in through government, and then residential were a lot of rain gardens and a lot of native habitat restorations. We saw a lot of people who became familiar with these projects through the state Lawns to Legumes grant, maybe whether or not they received that grant or not, but it opted them to contact us and go through the cost share program, which was great. Site visits were a little different this year. You know, usually we meet in person. We did most of that virtually. We had just our conservation district representatives did over the phone interviews. You know, they have great access with their GIS systems and just even Google aerial photos. We're good to get started, and kind of eliminated that need for that first site visit, which was great. And we had a lot of people who had concept plans from past years contact us, whether they had a plan from 3-4 years ago, and now they finally had the time and extra money to install those projects. So that was great. And overall, you know, usually projects are a little bit slower. People are excited in the spring and they want to do these. And then by fall, I still have a lot of outstanding projects this year. People got them in really fast, which was great. So we'll see how that plays out, especially for our maintenance grants in coming years. You have the budget status report, but so you can see how the project funds were allocated this year. Yeah, really great to see. We didn't have any non-priority large scale projects, so all of those funds were in priority subwatersheds, which is good. A lot of funds for rain gardens. We had a couple of shoreline restorations, and then one larger restoration, and then that also accounts for the Snail Lake restorations in there too. I just counted that as one project. Overall projects, this map eventually is going to be all red. Just a lot of great projects spread out throughout the district. Total, we're at about 5.9 million, 352 projects total installed, average a little over 15,000 per project. And then I'm just going to go through these pretty quick. If anyone wants more detail or whatnot, definitely ask me, or I can follow up after. But I think someone at some point had asked to see this. So just a breakdown of dollar amount spent per city. This is overall. And then I just added the note that Roseville and Shoreview were added to this program when we incorporated that area in 2013. So the other ones were since 2006. Number of projects per city. Obviously Maplewood, we have a large area of Maplewood, so they're going to have the majority of the projects, but there's that. Also average dollars spent per city. So, it's a good mix of large scale projects. We get a lot of smaller residential projects that come in maybe $500 to $1,000. So that kind of lowers that average down, I guess. And then we also keep track of what subwatersheds these are in. We have dollar amount per subwatershed spent, and then number of projects per subwatershed. We also have our giant spreadsheet where we keep track of pollutant removals, total phosphorus, volume reduction, and total suspended solids removed in each subwatershed, and BAR uses that for our annual reports. So we do keep track of that and use those numbers. So I think that's great to see. This map just shows our targeted retrofit projects, so larger grant projects and projects where we go out and seek volume reduction opportunities at churches or schools, commercial sites. So again, getting pretty spread out, and I'll talk about some upcoming projects that we have proposed for next year. 2020 grant inspections went pretty well. This was the first year that Simba Blood, our natural resource technician, helped out with those, which was great. She obviously has a lot of plant knowledge, so was able to help more with plant identification, specific weed identification, and did a lot of one-on-one visits with homeowners. And then Mary Fitzgerald, our new permit inspector, she also helped with those between permit inspections and stewardship grant inspections. They were able to get out, so they did 141 inspections this year, which was 50 more than was done last year, which was pretty great. Again, time consuming. They tried to meet with people. A lot of people were home this year, so they met with a lot of them. But I think it was great, and we saw good success and follow up after the reports went out. People wanting to keep these looking good. We do have 3 failing projects. Unfortunately, one is pretty significant. It's a large infiltration basin holding water that we'll have to figure out how to move forward with that. And then a couple are just, I think 2 were plant projects where new homeowners moved in and they weren't aware of the project on there. So we have to hopefully work with them, maybe offer a maintenance grant and just help with a little upkeep on those. But overall, really great to see. And Snail Lake shoreline restoration finally went in this year. This was great to see. And of course, as soon as we started the planting, the water levels started to drop. So we're going to have to make some changes next year. We have our same contractor on board to do maintenance and do some fill-in plantings and just keep this looking great. I think originally, the numbers kept dropping. We had, when we started I think the original contract, we had about 23 homeowners on board, but with the high levels, people just were a little hesitant to move forward until the levels level out a little bit. So hopefully we can connect with those people as that happens. But we're excited to have these 14 homeowners, and then the Ramsey County beach area has a nice restoration area out there. So really excited about that, and we'll keep working with the homeowners. They seemed really excited to have this done and are excited to see how it looks in the coming years. And then Simba will be working with them closely to talk about maintenance and make sure they're ready to take that over when we're done with our maintenance contract in 2022. BMP maintenance program, again, super successful. So there's 2 parts to that. We have our contract where we hire contractors to do maintenance on our various retrofit projects, including schools and a lot of the churches. Maplewood Mall is on this. This year, for the last 2 years, we've had 3 contractors do that, and then we'll go out for a new request for proposals in about February, March. So we'll hire contractors for another 2-year period to keep maintaining those. But I think that's been really successful and been really good. We've had good luck with the turnovers to people once their contract is completed with us. And then the other part is our maintenance grant, which has been very successful. And I don't have the count in front of me, but you guys should see that on the budget status update. How many? I think it was 31 total projects approved for the maintenance grant program since it started in 2018. And again, we'll probably see more of those applications next year with all the projects that went in. At our internal meeting, we talked about, do we need a cap on that or whatnot? But at this point, we're just going to keep going with that. It's kind of a good enticer, if that's the right words, for people to put these projects in, maybe if they're a little hesitant about maintenance, especially taking on that cost if they do shoreline restoration or native seeding where we prefer that they have a contractor do the maintenance. It's nice to have that assurance that they'll have 50% of that cost covered, and ensures that we'll get a good, nicely maintained project. I wanted to give a shout out to our CAC members. I think this was in one of the reports earlier this fall, but I think Pam brought up at one of the board meetings that a few rain gardens on the Casey Lake area needed a little help. Some of the residents out there needed some assistance, and our CAC members stepped up and took that on. And Simba and Carrie were out there with Carrie's cute little helpers and really did a great job. And Simba spent a lot of time with the homeowners and throughout the area, made contact with everyone. There were a few new homeowners that have moved in since we did the project in 2014. So it was nice to get contacted with them again and just let people know about our maintenance grant and that they can get assistance in the future.
That's so good, Paige. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great. And they were very appreciative. equity outreach. So I have highlighted on here one project, but equity is of course a big topic. We have some kind of internal group that's talking about things. And this year we had a few projects going that I'll show you some pictures of, but that qualified in that area of the east side of St. Paul that we're trying to get more projects in. The lower Phelan Creek daylighting study is still going on. We've been actively being a part of that, where they're looking at daylighting some of Phelan Creek. And actually, when they first had the feasibility study out, they were looking at areas in Capital Region Watershed District, but now it looks like they're going to do some areas just south of Lake Phelan. So we've been part of that. And Lauren, our communication person, has been active in that, as well as Sage, to talk about how we can be more involved with those groups and keep that moving forward. So stay tuned for more to come on that. And then also this spring, we doing a sub-watershed assessment, working with BAR on that to do look at project opportunities in that east side of St. Paul that we have classified, as our equity area, and just looking for more opportunities, whether it's on business, commercial sites, or working with apartment complexes or whatnot over there. We have gotten in contact again with the ISABA, the East Side Area Business Association. So just 2 weeks ago, met with them, their monthly meeting, to let them know that we're still out here, and got some good praise from one of the council members there to kind of let people know that they can contact us, especially now. A lot of those businesses are hurting and struggling, and a lot of them maybe have drainage issues or whatnot that we can look at helping with. So excited about that. I did want to include this kind of brief letter someone sent. I get a lot of thank yous and really nice notes thanking the board, and I never share those, but I do get a lot. And this was one that came in recently, just someone very grateful for the approval of her grant for a porous driveway. It's hard to tell from the picture, but her driveway slopes right into her garage. She had major drainage issues. There was no other way to fix that except putting in this porous paver driveway. This was taken before it was finished, but afterwards she got several big rainfalls, and it's been working wonderfully. So just wanted to show that and let you guys know people are very appreciative of these grants. 2020, we had some big projects go in. The East Side Boys and Girls Club and Target Suburban Avenue in St. Paul were the big ones. East Side Boys and Girls Club, we put in kind of in the 2 parking stalls, porous pavers to help with some major drainage issues they had there. And then there's also a row of native plantings across the street, so or along the boulevard area. So that's great. Again, they're super appreciative. They had major standing water that would take up at least 4 or 5 parking stalls every time it rained or with snow melt, and they haven't had any issues since this got finished. So that's great to see. And then Target on Suburban Avenue, that's fairly complete. We need to do plantings and some punch list items in the spring, but the tree trenches went in and 7 rain gardens were installed. Dave was out there much of the time, as well as bar staff, and overall it went pretty successful. We're glad. Thankfully, they didn't have their normal Black Friday traffic because we weren't quite finished in time. So thankfully they were okay with that, and things are a little different this year that everybody knows about. And then one project I didn't put a picture of, but the board had approved it in 2018, was a special permit grant for the St. Paul Urban Tennis Center in St. Paul. They were a project that it wanted to install 5 new tennis courts, and with that that would trigger our permit, and they didn't have the funds to install the required BMP. So the board approved a special grant for that. They had a lot of hiccups along the way outside of our control, but they finally finished that this year, and it's looking great. We'll be helping with maintenance on that for 2 years, and then working with them to hand that over. So I think that'll be a great opportunity, again, where Sage and Lauren will get involved and work with the kids out there. So it's exciting. Upcoming projects. Some of these you've already heard about. We're working with Target again for a North St. Paul project, And that is out for review. They have about a 90% plan set out that Target is looking at the next couple weeks, hopefully get some comments back. That it will have 2 tree trenches and 4 rain gardens, and will remove about 50 parking stalls. So that's great. The St. Paul store removed 80 parking stalls. So great to see that they're willing to give that up. And this one, estimate, it's still early phases. It's about 1.1 million. And for this, we have about $123 in stormwater impact fund funds.
What, $123?
123,000, sorry, maybe I
Oh.
forgot that. Yes. $123,000 that we can use to that. And we also use some stormwater impact fund dollars for the projects that finished this year. So that's great. And then St. Rose of Lima, I think we have talked about at some points. This we had hoped would happen last year, but the church needed some additional funds. So the idea with this one is that this is a highly flooded area in Roseville. So the city reached out to the church, and they're going to be installing an underground treatment system, more for flood control. And then I don't know if you've ever been out to this parking lot, but it's a huge area of asphalt. So we worked with them. We're going to be removing significant area of asphalt, replanting it with some native plants, and then also doing a rain garden. That'll be our portion of it. And then the church needed to come up with funds for the redoing the rest of the asphalt that they want to fix up. So hopefully that still goes on. This would have been a great year to do it again with no church going on and no school. And also this is also a state fair parking ground. So we have to work around that schedule next year. Hopefully the state fair happens next year. And then I'm going to jump over to the bottom right corner is a picture of Twin Lake. So much like Snail Lake, where we worked with homeowners to do large area of shoreline restoration, we contacted Twin Lake homeowners with the same opportunity, doing a shoreline restoration on their sites and hiring one contractor to do that. And we have about 15 people signed up right now. We did initial site visits in August, I believe, and have sent out concepts to everyone and gotten approval from everyone who's interested in going forward. So we'll work on final designs and get those out for people to review in January, February before we go out to bid for that. So excited about that. And then I did hear from Bill. We haven't talked a lot about it, but I think our goal in 2022 would be to work with Lake Owasso and do the similar type thing. So we'll keep you updated on that. And then the top right is just a picture of a Semstone truck. So we contacted Semstone, which is their plant is located off Childs Road in St. Paul, down by the wastewater treatment plant. And they worked with Mississippi WMO in 2018 to do a big water reuse project. So they use basically potable water for the production of their concrete, as well as washing their trucks and equipment. And so they worked with MWMO to put in a reuse system. And so we reached out to them to see if they'd be interested in doing the same thing at the St. Paul site, and they are very interested. So we had some very preliminary discussions with them, but just wanted to run that by you. So this would be something a little bit different, and wanted to make sure that I know we've talked about reuse, and that's something of interest. What the MWMO did was offer 50% funding, and that's what we had talked to Semstone about, just kind of high level. At this point, their project is coming in at about 350,000, so that'd be about 175,000 in cost share funds if we wanted to do that. Again, very high level, nothing formal, but interested in feedback, thoughts before they continue on in this, I guess, was their main thing. I don't know if you want to do that now, if anyone has any thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick and say that we do have provisions for reuse in our in our stewardship grant fund. We have a calculator that we developed to help determine kind of credit for reuse. That calculator is more readily used for irrigation purposes. So we've been talking with Bar 2 about how to kind of determine what credit they would receive and, looking at funding and how that would all work. But if the board is supportive of, continuing to work with Sunstone on this kind of project, we can kind of iron out those details and bring them back to the board.
Okay, Tina, can you again just give a quick outline of what this project is?
Yeah, go ahead, Paige, if you want to just overview.
Yeah, so basically they would be installing, they'd be installing a system to capture stormwater and then use that in place of potable water for their production, concrete production, and cleaning of equipment.
And this would be at their site on Childs Road?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
What's the range of costs of this kind of project?
The Mississippi WMO project came in a little over 300,000. And this one, they need to install a few more. It's not as easy of a project, I guess. So they need to install a few more things. So right now their estimate is that little over 350,000.
My feedback is I like it, and it seems like something different that we could use for some good PR, and should try to tie that into it.
I agree. I think it's, I'm sorry, Cliff, I think it's interesting, but so once I clean off, where does this water, the sludge water or the dirty water, so to speak, where does that go?
Oh, so on their plant, it goes right into the stormwater treatment system. So none of it goes, it doesn't go into the storm sewer. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not treated in any other way before it goes into the sewer?
No.
Okay.
I would be supportive as well. I was wondering though, is Semstone the one that has the production plant on, is it 3rd Avenue? Also in our district? There's a concrete
in St.
plant.
Paul?
Yeah. What
I don't
street
know
is
if
that
they're
on?
still open there.
Oh, okay, that closed?
I don't know. I could quickly check.
You familiar with Paige?
No, I don't know about that one. They haven't mentioned it.
Isn't it 3rd Avenue, Marge, or is it? What
Yeah,
street is
it's
it?
right across from the post office.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And it's been there forever, but
Right.
I rarely drive that way, so I haven't driven by there in quite a while. So
Yeah, when you first started talking about it, I thought that's what you were talking about, but maybe that has closed. I haven't been there for a long time.
Yeah.
well, if it has, that's a big chunk of property that's empty.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I think that's in our district. Yeah, it's on the
It is.
east side of Johnson Parkway. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look into that one.
But if it is, then maybe we'd have some combined project for both sites or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's a great idea. But as I said, I'm not sure if it's still open.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
I thought, I just wanted to pipe in and say, really nice presentation and really strong work presented. It's very impressive. And while I don't have any suggestions for the immediate question you posed, I was thinking when you gave the presentation that when showing all these wonderful projects, that it would be really nice to have before and after pictures for as many as possible of these projects, particularly at a time illustrating, like if they had severe flooding problems, taking a picture of it right after a storm and showing that flooding problem, and then after and how that's been abated, and then I also just with all these little even the little smaller ones, it just, for people who might be thinking about doing a project, they could pursue the library of pictures, and it could create ideas of or envisionment of what is possible, like, an impervious driveway, or, just all the things that might be possible people might not already be thinking about.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. Definitely do that.
And again, Paige, that was great. And the projects you've been doing are impressive, and you're just doing such a great job.
Thank you.
It's
having
wonderful.
fun. Yeah, it's great.
Just one thing, and this was a great presentation. It's a great program. But I would second what Pam was saying. We need to get some of this stuff up on the website so people can see it and start to generate ideas. I like the idea of working with Semstone because it is another dimension of what we're doing is working with heavy industrial companies to achieve our objectives. And it's not retail, it's not a church, it's not a school, it's not a resident, but it's something that'll get these other businesses to start to think about how they can maybe use us to improve the environment. So great job.
Cool, good, thank you.
And to piggyback
Pass that on to
on
them.
that page, is this presentation going on the website? Because I think it should.
Yes, yep.
Okay,
It'll
and
go up on-
also, you know, when you ran through the cities and all that great information, I'm hoping that you send it to each of the cities annually also.
You know, I haven't, but I definitely can. I send them a reminder email every December, January that we have funding. So I can include that in there too.
Yeah, I think that the city staff, well, you know, is another sort of ambassador for our work. And they always like kind of the credit of knowing about these kinds of things too. So since you have such a nice package, I would send it to all of them.
Can do that. Awesome. Well, good. Then just a couple more and hopefully I have my answer with all your nice praise that we will approve the program for next year. Basically, you're just showing this as our same priority areas that we've had for the last few years. I want to keep those. We're not proposing any changes. And then same coverage amounts too, as far as for homeowners and then the larger scale projects with the 50, 75, 100% for all those different items. And then we have the master water sewer projects in there, the public art and aquatic vegetation harvest and the plan development, which we've had a couple applicants take advantage of, and then continue our maintenance program. So not proposing any changes there. And just looking for board approval for the 2021 program.
Usually we get to see your dog. That's not your dog.
Well, that's.
There you go.
I had a dog like that white one.
I know, American Eskimo.
Yeah, miniature
German
American
Spitz.
Eskimo. Nicest
Yep,
dog.
He has his moments, yeah.
I think, are we ready to make a motion?
Yeah, I would move approval of the priority areas and the contribution percentage chart.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? It's a great program. Anybody else, or are we ready to vote? Pam, I think we're ready.
All right.
Tina?
Diane?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
And Marge?
Aye.
Great. Thanks, Paige.
Motion carries.
Thank
Good.
Next, let's see what we've got here. I was just so engrossed in these presentations. Is the 2020 program overview and
That's
program
what we-
review.
Yep,
Did we just do that?
And yep.
All right, so then next is capital improvement budget fund transfer. And we all agreed to that at the last meeting. So now you put together the memo, right?
Yep. So we talked about this at a couple different budget meetings this year. So this resolution would transfer those funds from the opportunity fund to the targeted retrofit projects fund.
So we need a motion.
I'll move
Somebody?
I'll move approval of resolution 2002.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay. Let's
Diane.
vote.
Diane.
Aye.
Larry.
Aye.
Cliff. Cliff, you are muted.
Aye.
Thank you. Pam.
Aye.
And Marge.
Aye. So next is the huge water monitoring report.
Actually, first we have the budget, the budget approval.
Okay.
That's pretty important.
Yeah.
So before we get to the water quality report, we do have the adoption of the final 2021 budget and levy As requested at the September meeting, I do show a levy increase of 0, so we will not be increasing that levy with this motion and with this action of the resolution. Larry had emailed me this week with a good question about kind of how the math all works out. So I just want to let you know about how this kind of looks. So when you see the levy amount and you see the budget amount, there's carryover from the capital improvements budget. There's also other income that comes in through permit fees, interest of the like. There's dedicated carryover from the general fund that we show just the one line item for the feasibility studies that will carry over into 2021. But then I also take a look at what the 2020 general fund carryover might be for the year. This year it's estimated around $1 million. So that brings our total budget need to be taken from our general fund balance of about 600,000, a little bit less than 600,000. That's all. There's a lot of estimating going on there, but that's how that those budget numbers come to. So you can see in the budget status report that the general fund balance at the beginning of the year was about 4.6 million. And so that's where that 600,000 would come from, is from that balance. And that brings us to the total budget. So just to make sure everybody's clear on how that all works.
I would move approval of the resolution number 2003.
Second.
Discussion? All right. Tina, should we take a vote?
Sure. Diane?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Claire?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
And Marge?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Good job, Tina.
Motion carried,
Yeah,
by the way.
Good job in getting that in order. And
Yes.
I was laughing, but Brad's being photobombed, so it's just kind of funny.
I like it. Now, thank you all too for the input and guidance on this budget this year. Looking forward to 2021, lots of good things.
So Tina, I have a question. Is somebody presenting?
Yeah, so, yep. Keith Pilgrim from BAR is here, as well as Eric Cordy from our staff. They're going to tag team, I believe, a little bit on this presentation. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I will share my screen. So yeah, you're right, there's a ton of information here. So I am just gonna present the overview on how this monitoring report is laid out. And then at one point, I'll bring in Keith to go over the conclusions and recommendations that this report came out with. So here we go. So starting out, table of contents and kind of how I'm going to lay out this presentation. Start with the introduction. Then we go to the part where there's conclusions and recommendations. Then we get into lake water quality. Then we talk about streams. And in the streams, this includes all our creeks and the Beltline. Then we'll go into kind of emerging monitoring needs. So we'll look at PFASs and chlorides, and then look at best management practices. So this includes all our iron enhanced sand filters, all our spent lime filters, and then the alum plant too. So just starting off, we have terms and state standards, just some nice helpful definitions to help you throughout the report, and then state standards. This is talking about how Minnesota water quality standards are determined. And then we have an introduction page, talks about what kind of things we're monitoring and what we're looking at. So streams, lakes, and VMPs, what kind of parameters we're looking at too. So phosphorus, ortho, phosphorus, chlorophyll A, SECI, total suspended solids, chlorides, and nitrogen. And then we're looking at trends, recent trends, so 10 years or historic trends for as much data as we have. And then again, looking at some emerging issues in the watershed. Then we're into conclusions on page 7. So this is looking at 10-year trends for lakes and creeks. Are they improving? Is water quality decreasing, or are they staying stable? Also looking at the iron enhanced sand filters, such as Beam Avenue and Woodland Rain Garden. How are they performing? If they're performing well or not so well, does the media need to be replaced? And looking into future monitoring. Same with the spent lime filters, Wakefield Lake Cell, Frost Canard, and Willow Pond CMAC. How are they performing? Does the media need to be replaced? And what does future monitoring look like? And then also the elm plant, how is that performing overall? And then we have the recommendations. This just is a couple examples of what's in each of these. So continue monitoring. Besides lakes and streams that we're already doing in different BMPs, we should continue chloride monitoring. Is there anywhere we can expand? So chloride monitoring, again, as a broad once-a-year effort to identify hotspots. So this is looking into ditches and ponds that we don't already monitor. Is there anything new we can be monitoring? Again, ponds, to find hotspots for phosphorus and chloride and understand how these perform in the district. And then efficient monitoring. We have so many BMPs now in the district. It's hard to monitor them all. So figuring out a rotation, maybe one every 2-3 years to come back to see how they're performing. Again, to see if that media or whatever is happening in this BMP needs to be changed out or refreshed somehow. And then future additions to this report, maybe add documenting carp removal or shoreline restorations in the district, and really, additions we can make. So Keith, should I pass it off to you?
Well, I maybe let's expand a little bit, Eric, on what you were talking about there.
Okay.
So the chloride monitoring is something I think people are more interested in now, and we have some most of our the monitoring locations that you are taking, Eric. You include chloride in your monitoring. I developed a map for the report to try to better understand hot spots in the watershed, but it's a little bit challenging. It's a large watershed, and we have a limited number of locations that we're monitoring. It's a large number, but it's limited in terms of trying to identify where chloride might be coming from. So in this report, I recommended maybe doing a one-time effort once a year across the watershed to better understand where the chloride is coming from. You can see that in that report, we found some places that it's higher in lower Battle Creek, obviously with the chloride TMDL, but other places like Markham Pond, we found very high chlorides. So I recommended that. And the monitoring schedule. So you have been monitoring a lot of these BMPs, and in the report, I recommended maybe developing a rotating schedule of BMPs we are monitoring to better understand how they're performing. So, for example, we've been monitoring the Beam Avenue filter for several years, but perhaps we can, not have to monitor every year and take your limited resources and expand it to other sites. And that was basically my recommendations for the report.
Sounds good.
I have one question about that.
Yes.
Monitoring chlorides, is that the purpose of doing it, is to try to identify where the problem is coming from? Because as I understand it, there's nothing we can do about chlorides. We can't get rid of them the way we can phosphorus and other things. So
Right. Chloride definitely is a conservative chemical, so you can't get rid of it, but there are ways to mitigate it, like smart salting of roads. There are a lot of ways that can be done. There are some locations in the watershed where there are very low chlorides. If you look at Lake Owasso, it's very low. Other lakes, it's higher. So I think targeting maybe your efforts might be worthwhile. I think at the end of this report, they show a picture of a salting truck. So there are different ways to do salting that can minimize chloride use.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were gonna, push in that direction and try to make an effort there, you definitely want to know where to expend your resources. And so that was the idea of trying to understand hotspots and where you might want to expend those resources if you decide to do so.
I have a question on that same issue. I made a note that if we find hotspots through some type of monitoring program, are there specific programs we can maybe collaborate with cities to try to address that? I know the state's done a lot of work on chloride management, and they have recommendations for road application, and we've done some things with residents about reducing salt use in their own properties. But there's a limitation in terms of what can actually be done. So I was thinking that if we do go to the effort of trying to identify so-called hotspots, which I think we can intuitively identify many of them already.
Right.
What are we going to do with the information? Is there something we can do to work with cities to actually address the issue? And would they be willing to actually go that extra mile? I know MnDOT is a big user of salt on state roads and is one of the biggest impacts for Battle Creek Lake, for example, and Battle Creek being right next to both of them. MnDOT's done a lot over the years, and they've reduced their salt application considerably, but it's still an issue. So I don't know what effort, what we could do in addition, but I think if we can identify some specific programs to work with cities on, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think what I've heard from our city is that if it could be a targeted approach, if they knew of these really knew where it was most important from a watershed perspective to reduce, they might be able to target those areas more specifically, and we could work with them on that. And maybe even continue to look at alternatives to salt in those areas to test. So I do think that there's opportunities where we can take that data to the cities directly and work with them on those items.
So we will have this information, right?
This is
the research is being done on which waters are affected the most by chlorides.
We do some now. The idea is that we'll expand this more and branch out more.
Okay, and
really
as we
dial it in.
expand the information, will we also expand delivery to cities and counties and?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that.
Yeah, we can share that information and work with them on programming.
So,
and one thing, Cliff, I know that some districts do cost shares with cities to purchase equipment that is, delivers brine salt rather than, crystalline salt that has reduced salt use. So I think some of these, and I know that the annual chloride or salting conference, I can't remember exactly the name of it, that's done, they come up with innovative things like different plows and such that are apparently better to scrape off the snow that doesn't require salting to soften up the snow. So I think there are new things. I think it is challenging. It's like there are limits to these things, but I think there are some things that are out there that might be applicable that just cost capital to get going.
So Keith, did you indicate that there right now is 0 ways available for us to mitigate salt once it's actually in our waters?
Chloride is one of those things that is conservative. It does not precipitate. It may stick to soils, but it's not necessarily a permanent thing either. It may go into the soils, be absorbed, and then be deabsorbed later on during the summer. So you sometimes see this pattern, but you can't treat it like chloride. I mean, like phosphorus, where you can remove it in a filter or anything, or you can't settle it. It's just going to move downstream. So it's very hard to control. When it's out, you can't control.
Right. So I think that's a really big take-home message for us. And I think it might be helpful for us to have we know at essentially the rates at which we're dumping salt into our lakes. For example, maybe Battle Creek Lake next to 94. It might be helpful to see, just put some numbers in there, and based on the current rates in 10 years and in 50 years, this is what we think is going to happen. And if we have 0 ways of mitigating that right now, and that could help us and others realize how important it is for us to find other alternative ways besides using salt to you know, get rid of our icy roads, like, you know, heating up the roads or something, or, so I'm thinking more of what can we do to get some innovative solutions to alternatives to salts besides just, you know, certainly what you're saying, you know, using less salt and using the best practices and more sand and timing and with water or whatever, but alternatives too. And if there's things the watershed district can do to help promote innovative solutions in that regard, I'd be all for it.
Great.
Yeah, the other thing that comes up with this is combining what we're doing and making sure it's consistent with what other watershed districts are doing or other water management organizations. Because again, on a state level, it's an issue. They spray the roads before it snows now and all kinds of things to reduce it. But it would seem to me that having a coordinated approach with the watershed districts would be able to make it more important to the cities and the state and the counties.
Yeah, I'll just mention as a reminder, maybe even new information for some, that years back there was a statewide, or I think it ended up being metro-wide chloride TMDL process that was led by the MPCA. And we collaborated with them. A lot of our data was used as part of that study and continues to be part of that effort. And so that we've gone through that process with our neighboring watersheds as well, and our cities. So, and we do support that saltwater symposium that Keith was mentioning as well. So there are items that we continue to be working with our neighbors and cities on. So we'll continue that. And I agree, I think there are some solutions that, and part of the research council as well that is looking at some of these things. So keep on with that. Diane has her hand up. Hi, Diane.
Yeah, I wanted to say this is a great report. I'd like to see it on the website. I'd like to see it go to the cities, but I'd also like to see it include just a few more things. You've got information about Owasso and how impaired it is, and that water goes to Wabasso and then into Grass Lake. Grass Lake must have some problems. I know Bill has talked about working on the carp there. I think it should be included in the report. Then once all that dirty water moves out of Grass Lake, it goes to West Lake Vadnais. Well, that's not in our district, but all of that water goes through our district. And we've had really detailed reports about how bad that water is. And we haven't heard anything in a while about how it's going to be cleaned up. So something should be mentioned about West Vadnais Lake. And then I think the Twin Lake report should include something about the flooding from West Vadnais, because those residents have been in here many times talking about how their lake got polluted with all of that water. And it's one of their core goals to get it cleaned up. So I think we should mention that a whole lot of bad water from West Vadnais went into Twin Lake. So if those three things could be added, I think it would give a better overall picture. And I'd like a report on what Vlamo is doing or what the timing is, because I thought there was going to be something scheduled for this year or next for cleanup. Otherwise, I think it's great, and I think we send it out to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
one thought I just had about what Diane just mentioned is that maybe there could be a section of this report, or maybe under appropriate lakes, is kind of an other issues section. Because it's not, we don't have data on that. We know it happened. We don't know the degree of impact, but we know it did impact to some degree. So I think maybe some just subjective discussion of the fact that there are some other issues, there might be some other water bodies that should be added to this report in the future, and address it that way. Just an idea.
I also had to follow up on what Diane said. This needs to be put up on the website, but this is the 2019 report, 2018 and a 2017 and a 2016 report.
Nope, I should have mentioned that. So
Okay, I found this on the web. Or is there a
some of these series going.
My computer never answers me except I don't want it to. And it was trying to help out. It was looking for the reports, but I stopped it. Don't worry.
So this is the first year that we'll have published so this is draft right now. And so after you guys have seen it, it is planned to be on our website, and with any changes we might make to it before we post it. But this is the first time we've published a formal report like this.
Okay.
So there's not other reports on the website, but what we have now is a template for moving forward. Similar to our annual report, we will have a template moving forward for both of those. Brad, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just, Eric, you had mentioned PFAS at the beginning.
Something's wrong with your voice.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
There we go.
You sound like a transformer.
Sound growly like a little bear.
Eric, PFAS, that was mentioned at the beginning of the report. Can you hear me?
It's just really garbled.
It's really
Yeah, no.
garbled.
Maybe put your question in the chat and then I'll have Oliver. Any other questions? Did you have more, Keith, that you were going to? Oh, PFAS, Brad says, question mark. Oh, Keith, you're muted.
My daughter decided to burst into song, so I put myself on mute here. All right, yeah, back to Eric, actually. So.
Okay, should I continue?
Yes, Brad had a question about PFAS, but are you going to talk about that at all coming up?
Just a little bit in the yes, eventually.
Okay.
Long story longer. All right, the next section is the lake water quality section. I just took one lake out of here to kind of go over how we have it organized. Each lake has 2 pages. This is the first page. So right below the picture, we have the lake chart, and this is just kind of a big picture look at the lake. So it has the lake designation, whether it's shallow or deep, the tributary and surface area, the average and max depth of the lake. And then our nutrient classification, is it stable, at risk, or impaired? The accountable municipalities, and then downstream water bodies. And then below that, we have the map, the location of the lake. And then in orange is the subwatershed. And then next to that is kind of in-depth description about the lake and the lake uses, any impairments that it has, monitoring that's been done, any trends we're seeing, any strategies to reach our goals, and then any water quality projects that have been done in the subwatershed. And then the other page is more of a visual look at the data. Up top, we have a water quality chart. The first column has parameters, phosphorus, chlorophyll, secudisc, and chloride. And then the next column, there's a state standard for all those parameters. The next is what last year's water quality was in that lake, the year average, or the growing season average. And then you can compare that to the 10-year average next to that. And then we have the trend, whether the phosphorus is decreasing over time, or chlorophyll, or seki. And then below that, we have the graphs, just another visualization of that data, showing the growing season yearly average. Then we have a line each of these parameters, showing the state standard. And then the black line there is the 10-year trend line. Next, we hop into streams. Again, we have an example here of Fish Creek. Set up pretty similar to the lakes. Below the picture, we have the stream chart showing tributary areas, creek length, downstream water bodies. Designation for it, is it impaired or at risk? Municipalities dealing with this, and then our nutrient classification. Is it stable, at risk, or impaired? And again, we have a map showing the subwatershed, and then another description of the creek. Is it impaired? What's the monitoring look like? Any trends and water quality projects that have happened in the subwatershed?
Quick question.
Yeah.
On Fish Creek, in your Fish Creek discussion, you do mention that there was some E. coli issues a while back. Have we retested for that recently?
We do. Yeah, we do every 2 weeks. Grab for E. coli. I don't know what the latest numbers are though.
Okay.
But we
I was wondering
do.
if that issue's gone away.
Yeah, I could check into that.
Oh, the other question I had was, is this report meant to be printed, or is this going to be just a electronic version?
Yeah, I think right now the plan was just to have it electronically.
Yeah, I would support that.
Yeah.
And then next, yeah, so we have the visual representation of the data here. Again, we have the water quality chart showing the parameters. This time it's phosphorus, total suspended solids, nitrate and chlorides. Then we have the state standards again, the results from 2019 in Fish Creek and the concentrations, and then the 10-year average concentration for the year. And again, how all those parameters are trending. And then graphs showing the yearly average and the state standard for each of those. Next, Brad mentioned we're talking the PFAS. And here's a little breakdown. This is one of those emerging things we're looking at monitoring. In this breakdown here, we talk about what they are, the common uses and where they come from. And so MPCA has done a bunch of monitoring. So what was detected, what were the concentrations, and were these were the samples from surface samples or from the foam samples? And then we included two maps here showing the top map has the sampling locations from 2019 and the one below from 2020, showing samples taken along the stream and some taken at the lake, Battle Creek Lake. Next, hot topic, talking about chlorides. As we said, it's an emerging issue. In this description, we talk about the chloride standard and why high levels of chloride are a problem, and talking about identifying hotspots or potential hotspots. And again, talking about where we should monitor to see where these hotspots are. Included in that is a couple of maps trying to visualize the hotspots. On the left here, we have average concentrations in lakes and streams. The smaller the circle and lighter the color, the lower the concentration. As the circle gets bigger and darker, the concentration increases. Same with a map on the right-hand side, except this time it's maximum chloride concentrations in lakes and streams. But again, as it gets bigger and darker, the concentration, it shows that concentration is increasing. And then the next section is BMPs. I grabbed the iron hand sand filter in the Beam Avenue site specifically. But again, same sort of layout, BMP chart showing what city the BMP is in, what subwatershed, the year it was completed, the cost, any funding sources, and any partners that have helped with the project. And we have a description of it, the background, how it works, how the technology works, the monitoring, performance and removal rates, and any recommendation. Again, like maybe the media looks like it's spent and isn't working and we should replace it.
So I understand that what you're recommending here is that we monitor it for another year to see if that downward trend in efficiency is still holding true before
Yes.
we replace it.
Yes, and we did monitor the Beam Avenue filter this year. I haven't looked at the data yet, but we
Yeah,
will
it seems
be
like
able-
there's definitely some reduced efficiency there.
especially with ortho.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, so here's a visualization of the water quality graphs for this. The average inflow concentration is the box in blue. The outflow concentration is in red. And then the percent removal is the green line above. As you can see in the middle graph, the ortho really dropped out last year, and even the total phosphorus removal rate dropped too. So we'll have to look at the data from 2020 and see how that's doing, and maybe we will have to replace the iron enhanced sand at some point here. And that's my presentation.
One more question. On that iron enhanced sand, are you sharing all this information with St. Anthony Falls Labs before you work up a recommendation?
We can, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the last information that they published was that they thought that this media might last 30 years even before needing to replace, but I think we're seeing, if this year holds the same, we're seeing that wasn't holding true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can definitely share our findings with them.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Say another question on the sand filter. Are you finding that iron carbonate or the hard stuff extending on maybe half to the halfway point or farther, or is it still up in that upper third?
Yeah, so what Dave's talking about is we found in the first like 20 or 30 feet in the last couple of years, the top, I don't know, Dave, what do you say, 4 or 5 inches got really, really hard.
Correct.
And so we're wondering if that's kind of hurting the performance. It didn't seem like it the year after we kind of discovered it, but now it seems like maybe something's happening. So
Yeah,
I'm not
at
sure.
that-
I haven't been out to the site enough this year to kind of go take a look, but next year for sure we'll take a better look at that and see what it looks like, especially after looking at how it performed this year.
Nice job. Is your garage heated?
It is not all the time, but it can be.
Okay.
I think just one more comment, since I think Bert is still on the line and he had some questions in the visitor comments about Twin Lake in particular. And since he hung on through all those presentations, Keith, did you want to just make mention of some observations about Twin Lake?
I guess Bert has the data, I'm assuming, or is that not true? Should I bring the data up on the screen, or what do you?
I think he has seen it on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So the main goal of this report was to simply present the monitoring data rather than do an analysis of it, to identify sources and sinks of phosphorus in the watershed and how it may be changing in Twin Lake. So there are trends that are provided in the report that show slight increases in total phosphorus and chlorophyll over time, and a slight decrease in Secchi-disc over time. Recent changes in Twin Lake seem somewhat similar to the other deep lakes, Lake Owasso. Going through all this data at the same time allowed me to see some similarities between the Ramsey-Washington lakes and how they're behaving in response to different climatic themes of that particular year. So I can see in, for example, if you look in the report, you'll see that Twin Lake had some similar patterns to the Owasso in terms of total phosphorus, whereas in 2018, you can see the total phosphorus went down, and in 2019, increase. That was the same pattern I saw in Owasso, as well as in Tanner's Lake, some of the similar patterns that I noticed. If there's any specific questions, let me know. I'll try to answer them my best I can.
Yeah, I'll just mention too, and Bert, and there's another gentleman that lives on the lake that likes to dig into the water quality. And I had offered at the beginning of the fall, once we had this information put together, to have a meeting with some of the residents to talk more specifically about Twin Lakes. So we'll follow up on that.
Okay.
With the Twin Lake Association as well.
Sounds good.
Any other questions or comments for Eric or Keith about the water quality report? I know it's a lot of work, and we have had this data for years, and it's just nice to have it visualized in this way, and these tools, this information. Yes, the report will be on our website, but we're also going to be pulling some of the graphics out to put on the lake pages on our website as well. So look forward to that in the future too.
Yeah, I had one question for Keith. So Keith, 18 and 19 were extremely wet years.
Yes.
And we seemed like we generally saw an increase in TP in most of our lakes. And that trend was evident in parts of Minnesota, especially southern Minnesota and western Minnesota.
Yeah.
So are you seeing that bump in TP and Twin? I haven't looked at the data for Twin, but is that kind of similar to what you're seeing in Twin?
In 2000, I just had the data up here just a second ago. In 2018, it was actually better in terms of total phosphorus, lower total phosphorus, and increase in 2019. I think, from the shallow lakes are more immediately affected by changes in stormwater runoff. So you can see a stronger correlation, I think. Whereas I think temperature and how warm it is during that summer has an impact on, and how windy and, wild climatically may have a bigger effect on how the internal load of a lake transports to the surface. So for example, like Owasso, I saw in 18, it was really highly stratified. So a lot of the internal load didn't probably move up to the surface, whereas in 2019, I think it was less stratified during the late summer. So the weather can have a big impact on how those deep lakes mix during that late summer, and how phosphorus can come from the bottom. So I think climate is different for the shallow and deep lakes. And how stormwater affects them is different, I think. I really have to look at the whole season to get a good feel for what's going on.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I think we're good. Thank you, Keith and Eric.
So that brings us, Tina, to you.
That does. Let me get to I didn't have a lot in here today. I knew that we'd have a lot of discussion with some other items today, but I did just want to give you another COVID update. Really hasn't changed, continuing on the same path. I did make a mention about a potential holiday gathering virtually, so look forward to hearing from us on that. Otherwise, we're continuing on.
I have a question though, Tina. As far as during coronavirus, is there any number that we can call where we'll get somebody at the office? Is anybody answering the phone like during office hours?
So we are checking the voicemail, so you won't get a right away answer, but Debbie's checking it multiple times a day for the voicemail.
Okay, so if we want to talk, we call Debbie.
Yeah, call, or the general phone number for the office. She's checking that voicemail.
Well, what is Debbie's number? Do you know?
Well, it's that you can call, she checks the general number. So that's the 651-792-7950.
651-792.
7950. I hope that's right.
Yeah.
I never call it, but
you and Cliff should know. Somebody there.
I have a question. I've forgotten already though. But I have a question about the Phelan Creek daylighting meeting. Can I get a quick update on that?
Yeah, so Paige mentioned it a little bit in her presentation as well. I don't remember what year did they come? Was that 2018, 2017, somewhere in there? The Lower Phelan Creek project came to a board meeting to talk about the daylighting projects that they've been looking at. So the old Phelan Creek ran from Phelan down to the Mississippi River, partially in our district and then mostly in Capital Region. We broke that old creek alignment into segments and had started to look at a few other as part of the, not the gold line, but the rush line. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The rush line. And so they were looking at some collaborations with Capital Region and where the rush line would go adjacent to the new creek or the old creek.
Yeah.
And then there became a push from the Lower Phelan Creek project to look first at the outlet at Phelan so that they would want to complete that portion of the project first. So we did hold a meeting just to we basically threw everybody in a room together between the city departments, Lower Phelan Creek, the watershed, the county, and just talked through everything on the table as far as what would need to be discussed and planned for and funding and different items. So there is a feasibility study. They do have an idea of what they would want, how much water they'd want, where it would go, how it would go. But it's, I would say, still a ways off. And Paige, you can fill in any gaps if you think I left anything out. But yeah, so there'd be some discussion with Cap Region. I mean, we'd be bringing some of our Phelan water. It's a pretty small or fairly small amount. It's more of a kind of a token stream through there. It's not, we talked about whether it would help with any flood control. That's a big no. In fact, it goes through areas that are flooded, in a large event. So those are considerations that need to be taken into account as well.
So are they still talking about daylighting farther down Phelan Boulevard? Or just along that open space by Lake Phelan?
So that Page, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the first segment they'd be looking at is that open space. And then the second segment that I think they were going to look at after that, is that correct? Was the Phelan Boulevard before it heads out of our district?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I know we had lots of discussions decades ago about this issue and it never went anywhere. So I'm very curious about how it's proceeding now. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions about the administrator's report? If not, you can move on to the project and program status report.
On to project and program, the projects. Any questions on any of these projects from anybody?
Larry does. Larry, you're muted if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead, Larry. Oh, can he hear us?
Yeah, he's unmuting, it looks like.
I am. There we go. What I found out from watching the programs before is anytime you make a noise, it shows your picture on there, and that's what I was. On the Keller Channel Weir and Phelan outlet progress, Brad, you were going to talk to them about why the bid was so high in the area of moving water out. Was there any outcome from that?
Well, hopefully my microphone works a little better now. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, good. Good. Sorry about that. Yes, we did have a meeting with the contractor to talk specifically about those couple of items. The primary item was the control of water. And after having a conversation with the contractor and their method that they feel is going to be most appropriate, I think their pricing is right. They did choose I guess, in the contractor's words, a much more dependable method of controlling the water during the full duration of of construction than what we talked to them about. We were looking at using berming, soil berming and diversion, and they actually have sheet pile that they're going to install and remove. And after talking through kind of their concerns for going with what they would consider a less robust method, it made sense why they had that much cost in there. We did talk to them about some other, less, items that were smaller in cost that they were going to take a look at, and I think we'll have a little reduction in cost, not the couple $100,000 that we had hoped for, but I think one thing that came out in that discussion, but it also came out here, and Dave and Bill might comment on this, is the amount of riprap that is being shown in the current set of plans around the fail and outlet structures, reducing that quite a bit. Just we don't feel like we have that much need, and some of the shoreline restoration that the district is going to implement as a final piece of this will help to significantly reduce that amount of rock, which will bring that cost down a little bit, but wasn't as much savings as we had hoped for, but we will get some here and there.
I just wanted an update on it.
Yeah.
Brett, I don't know if you mentioned this, Brad, but we're also minimizing the impact to the restored shore areas and keeping a close eye on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. It would be kind of interesting. It seems intuitively like it's going to be a real interesting project. Any kind of little movie somebody can take of the process going through there, I think it'd be a lot of fun to watch and post on the website.
Sure. Maybe some short video clips we can tie together.
Yeah, I think Lauren was already planning for that, so.
Okay, good. On the ranking tool, when do we expect to have that up on the website? Brandon gave a nice presentation today at the meeting about a similar tool that they were using in another watershed district that gave me some thought processes of how to use the tool when we get it. But I was just curious as to when we expect that to be up on the website.
Yeah, we should have that up in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had some questions about that too. So when it goes up, if we're supposed to provide comments on it, are you going to let us know when it goes up, and how long do we have to provide comments?
I mean, this is a working tool, so this is not something that is set in stone. It's something that we'll continue to work with. So I believe the report was in the board packet when he gave the presentation. So that's what's going to go on the website. So that's what I had intended for you all to look at if you wanted to provide comments, but I'll resend that out so that you can take a look at that.
Well, and we did already provide some. Have they been incorporated or rejected or what?
Yep, so he incorporated those comments into the report already. Yep.
Okay, and we were going to do kind of a test of this scoring by comparing it to some old projects and seeing how it turned out, if we thought they would be that kind of priorities. Are we still doing that?
Yep, so that's one of the ways we're going to use the tool. We're going to put in old projects and looking at future projects as well.
So is that coming back to one of our future meetings so we can?
Yeah, we can share that with you. That was something we were going to internally use as staff as we move forward, but that is something we'll share with you as well.
Well, I'm interested in it because it's really a way to test of it when we had already decided on projects, and we'll see how it plays out. So maybe some different kinds of projects that we've done using that tool would be great. And then in the future, how are we using it? Is it an advisory thing that will say, here's how this proposed project scored, or how's it going to be used?
Yeah, I think you'll see as we move forward with projects, or we propose projects that we want to move forward with, we'll want to make sure that we are informing you of how it ranked in that ranking system and how that looks moving forward. It's a tool that we'll use as staff to say, as we speak out these targeted projects. We'll look for projects that fall at the top of that ranking as we move forward with contacting landowners or cities and moving forward with that.
Well, that's why I liked it, because you'll have some consistent criteria and be able to articulate them, but that's also why I'd like to test it out and make sure that we like the way it's working before it includes projects we don't think are as important or excludes ones that we think should be.
Yep.
But I think we need to be careful that this is a tool to show us what our analysis is showing, what's top priority. But I think there's other factors that will come into play. Well, not only budget, but just personal preference in terms of there's this project that's maybe ranked, let's hypothetically a 10, and this ranks an 8, but really number 8 is more opportunistic. I mean, there's other factors, visibility, and maybe a council member or two has presented an opinion on it. And, I think I would just like to make sure we aren't looking at this as a hard and fast priority ranking for all our future projects.
That's what I was getting at about the process. So.
Okay.
Yep, and I agree with that. That's been my point all along. But the thing that Brandon talked about today, which again is a little different, but it does give you an opportunity, Cliff, to do a sensitivity analysis on things like why is something scoring high when you don't really think it's high. So what I like about it is it gives you all the stuff you ought to be thinking about in a project in one place. And in a way, the ranking doesn't make as much difference as the methodology to understand the scope of what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, those are good comments. I agree with everything.
Some of the criteria that he talked about for the other one fits into the things that Cliff was talking about, like the social vulnerability.
Right.
It would be kind of fun to actually look at some of these other tools that BAR's developed for other areas, because there may be some more of these criteria we haven't thought of.
Yep.
Good, thank you.
Okay, I had one more thing, and that was in the report on the water stewards. In there, it says something like she'd be happy to share her results or her methodology. I'd just like to challenge the communications, Lauren, to think of a way that we can get some of these people up on the website in an area where when somebody comes to look for something, they can find these tips. Basically what this says, if you want to know more, contact Sage, but you have to read this report to find that out. If you go to the website, we ought to have a section on there where these people can highlight what they've been doing as master water stewards or with their rain gardens. We talked about that before, to give some examples that are easy to find and can energize people, and to give a positive PR to the people who are doing something.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Lauren and I have, as she's been formulating her plan for 2021, and that's part of it, is looking at the website and how we share our successes as well as inspire others, and through those same kinds of stories. So she's really good. Lauren is also at looking at the analytics and looking at who's looking where and how to people. She's really looking at how to drive people to that information to make sure it gets seen. In our old website, we had pages and pages and pages, and you had to dig in, drill in real deep. So she's real sensitive to making sure that we have it readily accessible and easy for people to find. But that's really good feedback, and I'll share that with her as well.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Marge, I would like to comment on draw your attention to the paragraphs around the CAP maintenance and repairs project. You may have noticed in that write-up, we were in a, we got the approval from the board last month to move forward with maintenance project, the annual maintenance project. As a part of that project is some of those items in and around the Wasso Basin. As you recall, the Ryan Drive piece of that, the upsizing of that culvert, the raising of the road, things like that, were quite expensive. And so we were, as we were kind of fine tuning that and looking into permitting with the DNR for that particular improvement, we also started to look downstream and rerun the modeling, based on the improvements to get the DNR what they needed for to issue the permit for that. And as you recall, back when when Sam and Matt talked about the overall feasibility study, another improvement piece of all of this is upsizing the culvert, very close to Jarvis Lake in Keller Parkway. Well, there are some homes that are currently in the flood zone, just upstream of that culvert. And by improving things upstream and refining the model, it showed an ever so slight increase in those flood levels in the creek between Edgerton Road and Keller Parkway. So as you saw in maybe a line or two in that paragraph, we may need to prioritize Keller Parkway. Well, we met again this morning with the team running the hydraulics on that, and we do believe that has to come first. And that's a pretty significant piece of the project as well. There are two large diameter pipes in there now, and the general recommendation from the overall feasibility study was to add 2 additional, even larger pipes to pass that flow through, so we're not raising the flood level as we move more water through the system. I guess short answer is that's about as expensive as the Ryan Drive culvert. We believe both are needed to help this system to work really well. So it's the team's recommendation that we actually pull both of those together and bid that as a separate project because it's going to be quite large. I think you'll get a different type of contractor that's more specialized in that bigger pipe work. Both of these are improvements. They probably don't technically fit under the maintenance. I was hoping to wrap it all together, but I guess that's the direction I think we should head. And then through that process, we can make sure we have in Keller Parkway the right system there. We may end up having to remove both the culverts that are there and put in essentially a large box culvert or in some form of a bridge, which may be more cost effective and more hydraulically efficient. But I guess bottom line is I'm recommending piecing those together in a separate project and bidding that separately. And then moving forward with the rest of the maintenance project as we normally do each year, and proceeding with that and getting bids in December, bring those back in at the January meeting.
Well, Brad, that makes sense. So what would be the negatives associated with doing that?
There's really no negatives. It's more of now you're going to have to do both of these together, most likely, and it just raises the total project cost.
By about how much?
By about $700,000.
Oh, do we have money to do it? That would be Tina.
Yes, we do have funds in our flood damage reduction fund to do
okay.
So you'll reduce the amount in the CIP project by the Ryan Drive portion of that estimate, which I think was about 600,000, if I remember correctly. But it's in that ballpark. And then you add on the pipes or the upsizing of the conveyance through Keller Parkway. So those two together, all total project cost, I guess, very rough estimate from the feasibility study would be somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 million for those two pieces.
Okay,
that
but
would
we
then
need
start
those
to
two.
get us moving. We need those two pieces to move the water through
Okay.
to help as we were talking about in that study.
I would support that approach.
Okay.
I would too.
I would too. I saw that in the report. I agree.
Okay.
So do we need to do anything about that? Do we need to make a should we make a motion just so it's clear?
I don't think you need to, but I mean, you're gonna information before you'll see the plans again before we go up for bid on that project.
I'm just saying it's a significant amount of money and we're sitting here and it'll take about 1 minute.
Okay.
Somebody make a motion in a second.
I would move that we authorize the staff to prepare the cost estimates and preliminary plans for to include the culvert in Keller Parkway and combine that with the Ryan Drive improvements as a separate capital improvements project.
Great. Second, anybody?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Tina?
Diane?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
And Marge?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Anything else, Brad, before we wrap up?
Just tied to that project, we did have a conversation with the City of Little Canada Public Works Director. As you recall, we were asking them about potential partnership in funding for both of these now. So they're open to having those conversations. They weren't ready to give us any direct response other than they understood why we were asking and they will consider it. So we'll continue to pursue that with the City of Little Canada.
Well, and it's formalized.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Report of managers. We'll go around the room. Tina, you want to call out the managers' names?
Sure, we'll start with Diane.
Just a couple things. I enjoyed the presentations today at MAUD, so I'm hoping that we can add that to the agenda for January, just maybe lessons learned or something quick. Always good reminders on things and some new ideas. So want that added. A question, when is the lake monitoring stuff going to be up on the website?
So I just saw the actual pages have been built, so that's all done. It should be within the next week or so. They should be on the website.
Great, thanks. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to do about that dirty lake in the middle of our water flow that Flamo is in charge of. That we have been talking about, and we've had projects we can't do because it's so dirty, and it's sending it all down through Jarvis Creek and the whole rest of the area. So update us, please.
Yeah, so I'll touch base with, so they have a newer administrator, so I'm going to touch base with him and see what his plans are moving forward, and I can report back to you.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Who do we have next, Tina?
We'll go to Larry next.
Just a quick update on the MAUD regional meeting that happened this afternoon over a period of an hour, it turned out. Just as an update on the resolutions that they're going to be talking about Friday morning.
Yeah.
The 6th. I know, Cliff, you sent out a note on the one. They have rejected anything that came in and didn't go through the process.
Yep.
Is no longer on the agenda. So it's 1 through 6. And frankly, the discussion at the meeting this afternoon, there doesn't seem to be much support for any one of the 6 when you came to it. Maybe the one on the goals, but that wasn't well defined either. So it could be sort of an interesting meeting on Friday morning.
And thanks, Larry, for attending that.
Yeah, I was having internet issues all afternoon, kept having to reboot my modem and my router, so I wasn't able to tune in to that.
Well, we could have used you because I'm a sort of an outsider on these things. Everybody else seems to know everybody except, and I could have used somebody who knew a lot of the people that were there, but that's okay. It worked out really well, and it was a very good discussion of the issues. And you know, again, it'll be interesting Friday morning to see how things move forward.
Thanks, Larry. Cliff.
I don't have anything else.
Good. Pam.
I'll go, Tina. I don't have anything else, so.
Okay.
Sorry, I was at the WAD website. I have nothing, and if nobody has anything else, I would move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, we are adjourned. It was a good meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Yes,
Thank you,
everybody.
Good seeing everybody's faces at least.
Yes.
I would like to have another update though before we go. This is just, you can, on Hillcrest, once they have something a little more worked out.
Oh, yes.
It'll be a while.
Yeah, you'll definitely.
It's going to take 10 years. It will be a while.
I think they'll have a concept plan next year sometime.
Okay.
But it's going to be difficult for them to really come up with anything very concrete. You know, once they have a concept plan, they have to find somebody that will be the developer, and that takes time. You look at how long the Ford site has taken to actually.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. It's been.
It's taken a long time.
20 years.
Well, I think from the time St. Paul got ownership, it's been about 10, I think.
Oh, I think longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know, but the Ford plant closed a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I'll just mention too, even though the city's the LGU, I mean, I think they're going to have quite the exercise in sequencing for wetland impacts with the TEP and Bowser and other agencies weighing in, because it is an undeveloped site. So there's not I don't know. There's going to be, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I can see their reasons for wanting to change a lot of the ponds. But yeah, there's a lot of options they do have, and they could leave them. But I think their options for actually getting final good developable pads for buildings is going to be difficult the way the current site is shaped and its topography. That's why I mentioned that. But I think in the end, I think it's going to have to be altered significantly, and that's going to impact the ponds. So we'll
I agree with you, because I do know that golf course.
Yeah.
And
I blocked it
you
a
know,
lot.
it's a series of about 12 different hills.
Right.
So
It'll be interesting.
All right.
Keep it quiet, Tracy.
It's really against my nature to be this quiet. It's really hard. But it's nice to see you all. And it's nice that you didn't need any legal help tonight. It's like kind of a relief, isn't it? But I wish you all the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, through the holidays.
Stay put, everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and have a happy new year, because we won't see you until next year.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Right. Yeah, everybody. Yeah, hunker down, stay safe.
I just found out my first friend died of COVID.
Oh, I'm
just
sorry.
Really?
So it's difficult, and it's very serious, but it's the first, I've only known a couple of people that have gotten it. But he's the first one I knew of that died. It's serious. It's funny to see there's so many people don't think it's serious, but
I know two people who have died.
yeah, I don't.
My high school classmate, and one is my tech